to Dave Lee on Investing Today. We have a special guest, Rob Maurer from Tesla Daily Podcast. We had him last weekend. We had a great just response from people. They learned a lot and were encouraged to kind of hear Rob's take as well. And I appreciate Rob just because I think he's got a good level, kind of balanced view on Tesla. And today there was a shocker that Elon gave early in the morning that riled markets, that completely just shocked people. And I wanted to go ahead and discuss this with Rob and try to share some, balanced views, or at least look at it from different angles so people can have kind of a broader view of what's going on here. So, Rob, can you tell me kind of how did you find out about today's news and Elon's tweets?
I actually received a text message about it. I thought I was signed up for like notifications on Twitter for Elon, but those had gotten turned off. So someone texted me and I saw it and popped it open, and I think the first thing is, you read all the comments about people like, oh, Elon has been hacked or something like that.
Yeah,
that's definitely not my first thought, because this isn't, as you know, I'm sure as well, not my first go around with Elon saying the stock price is too high. So I did a video about it this morning, but he's actually said this at least 5 other times in Tesla's history, starting back in like May of 2013. So I don't necessarily view this as any cause for concern about the future performance of Tesla stock or anything like that, because obviously he's said this in the past, the stock has performed well. So it's always shocking to see it, but it's not anything new from Elon.
Yeah. The way I found out was this morning. My wife, after waking up, she's like, I was working on a video I was going to do later today about earnings, and she comes in, she's, Dave, did you see Elon's tweets? I'm like, no, I'll look at it later. And she's like, no, you need to look at it. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll look at it later. And she's like, no, check the stock price. I'm like, what? And so I'm like, oh, okay. Wait a minute. I'm pretty like calm in like crises and stuff. So like after a minute or two, I kind of look at the stock price. It's like below $700. It's dropped like over 10%. And I go, okay. Then I look at Elon's tweets, and the first tweet I see is Tesla stock price is too high, right? In my opinion, IMO. And then he goes on and he shares a bunch of other tweets. I'm putting this on the screen for people right now. It says, now give back people their freedom, right? He's talking about freedom. And then he has another tweet that says, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and home of the brave. And then he goes on and says, rage against the dying of the light of consciousness. Rob, what's your take on this one? Rage against the dying of the light of consciousness.
So that one I didn't actually see until after I'd published my video, so I was kind of locked into making that. So I haven't had really any time to look into that. I don't know if that's a quote from something or if that is just Elon sort of saying that. Definitely an angsty comment. I think it sort of fits the vibe of Elon's mood over the last couple of days since sort of his take on the shelter-in-place order during the earnings report. So I don't know. I mean, Elon on Twitter, like I think has said himself in the past, like don't take him too seriously on Twitter. And he probably should tweet a little bit less. And it's really just his, place to have fun and kind of express himself. So I think we should take that at face value. And obviously there is an impact on the stock. And, if I had a preference, it would not be my preference for him to be tweeting, necessarily these sort of things. But that's, you get the good and you get the bad. And obviously, in my perspective, the good greatly outweighs the bad. So in terms of that specific tweet, I don't know. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, or even people on the live stream's thoughts.
I think there's a sense where I think things in California. So I think people need to have context of California. So California has this Governor Newsom, and he's been very stringent in kind of this shelter in place. But in California, there's a section called the Bay Area in Northern California. And this area has several counties, and they all banded together to have the most stringent like shelter in place, order in the entire country, basically. It's more stringent than California or anywhere else. And they extended their shelter in place order, right, until the end of May, early June. And they're not letting Tesla basically open their factory, which is, in my opinion, they should work with Tesla to make it happen. But then California also, on the other hand, the governor is like being kind of really stringent. He recently closed down all the beaches. In Orange County, they had a couple beaches that were open for people to go to do exercise. And there was a few pictures that leaked last weekend where there seemed to be a lot of people at the beach. He freaked out, people freaked out, and he's like ordering them shut. And now all these beaches in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, they're going to sue California. They're going to take this to court actually and pursue this as unconstitutional, that the governor can actually shut down the beaches. And so there's now this growing, and now I'm following kind of this really closely, and there's a lot of people getting very upset at these extended shelter of place. Now, the first 3 or 4 weeks, people are like, okay, I understand. But now it gets to this gray area, right? Where we do see the pandemic kind of curve flattening, and yet these stringent orders are not being laxed in some counties or states. And so this is the context, I think, that people might be missing, let's say, in different areas or states. But California is super stringent. Bay Area is the most stringent. They're not letting Fremont go back to work. But not just that, they're probably not even giving Elon Musk a timeline. They're probably not saying, oh, you can go back to open up the factory at the end of May. They're probably saying it's indefinite. Right? They just don't know. They're going to reevaluate at the beginning of June. And Elon Musk is just so frustrated. Like, this was the day before earnings, right? He kind of let out a bunch of tweets, talking about this. And it was like obvious to me. I'm like, oh, Fremont's not letting them open the factory, right? That's why he's ranting. And he's ranting again because there's behind the scenes discussions right now. He's trying to appeal to rationale and reason with the county, trying to, get Fremont up and running to the point where at least they can do some production, wear masks, testing, do whatever, temp checking, social distancing. He's probably willing to do anything at this point. But Alameda and the Bay Area is being so stringent that he's just so frustrated over the whole process, right? And he's like, basically, what can I do at this point, right? And it's not just Tesla, but he sees all these suppliers, right? He sees all these suppliers that are just like hurting, and some small suppliers are threatening like they're going to go out of business. He sees news reports of of lower income people like really struggling, and like this kind of it kind of should, like, the concern I have is like the class type of warfare nuances that some of this stuff is happening. Like the middle to upper class, they're able to stay at home, they're able to have savings and able not to work, so it's in their best interest to kind of extend the shutdown. Whereas the lower to lower middle class who have to work, who don't have this month's rent, and who don't have like food or money really to spare, these are the people that need to get back to work, and these are the people with the least amount of power in the political system. Right? And so there's a lot of pent-up rage that's going on right now from the bottom. And I think Elon is picking up on some of that rage, especially as these shelter-in-place orders don't get laxed, right, in the Bay Area. And so that's the context, I think, that of Elon's tweets. Right? There is a lot of rage he's feeling, and he's connected to a lot of rage of a lot of people around him, right? Especially lower income people, small suppliers, and he's seeing like the destruction, right? The economic destruction that's happening. And I think part of the thing is he's saying like, hey, I don't care about, the money. I don't care about my stock price. I don't care about that ultimately. Therefore, I'm going to come out and I'm going to say the stock price is too high, right? And I think, I don't know, what's your take, Rob? A lot of people have been saying that, Elon Musk is on the verge of getting his first tranche of the CEO Performance Award, right? So actually, I'll put up a screenshot of this here. So Elon Musk is set, as long as Tesla gets $100 billion in market cap for the trailing 6 months and also the trailing 30 days, right? And they need at least revenue of $20 billion, which they do have for the past year. So all they need is the market cap. I calculated it out, and it's about $540 or $550, right, average. And they're right about there because, the past, 3 or 4 months has been pretty high. So Elon Musk is on the verge of getting like this stock award. Was it 1.8 billion or something?
It's a number of shares. I think it's like 1.3 million shares.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and check. But yeah, you're totally on the right track there. I think he'll hit it next week.
Yeah.
With the stock price falling like it has today. So My thoughts on that, I don't think it's related at all to anything related to his compensation package. Like the stock it would have to fall significantly, like you said,
Yeah.
for it to not vest here pretty soon. So that's going to happen. And in terms of what actually that means, like Elon, those shares are vested, but he needs to then wait 5 years before he can do anything with them. So he can't actually sell
Yeah.
those shares for 5 years. So he's not actually getting paid. Like he's not getting $1 billion sent to his bank account. It just doesn't work like that. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's at all related to anything that is going on with Elon this week or anything.
Yeah. I think he's probably like received criticism over kind of like the whole scenario of him getting this large stock grant while trying to petition the government to open the factory. And so people are giving the narrative, oh, Elon's just looking out for money, right? Looking out for his own interests. I think that's probably also why he tweeted this thing of what I will sell my house or sell all my physical possessions, right? Yeah, it says, I am selling almost all physical possessions, will own no house. Just one stipulation on the sale, I own Gene Wilder's old house. It cannot be torn down or lose any of its soul. My girlfriend Grimes is mad at me. So what's your take on this? Why is he selling all of his... It's like I'm selling all of my worldly possessions, right? My physical possessions. And what's up with Elon there?
I wish I knew. I don't know. That's sort of way out of left field. I mean, all this is a little bit, but I think we can connect the dots on, the shelter in place and maybe connect that with the compensation package and the stock price and things like that. But the physical possessions thing, I don't know. I don't see the connection really.
Yeah, because I was telling my wife, I was like, Elon Musk, he lives in Bel Air. I mean, he has to live somewhere in SoCal. So he lives in Bel Air and he bought a house, but he also bought like several of the surrounding houses around him because he has to have like, security, and then he has basically full-time security, multiple people that probably just like patrolling. He needs a compound basically, right? And that's what he's bought. But if he's going to sell that, right? And it's like, what is his plan now? Like, is he going to rent? Like, is he not, like, what is he going to do? Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe he's going to rent back the same place. But then I was telling my wife, come on, it's like the guy has billions and billions of stock anyways, right? It's like, sure, he might not own a house, but he could spend like hundreds of millions of dollars like in rent or whatever. It doesn't matter for him, right? I mean, so this whole thing of like, not having physical possessions or selling most of them, it's kind of a trite, kind of symbol. I was telling my wife, it could be kind of like solidarity, right, in this time of crisis for those who are really struggling, right? Saying, hey, okay, I'm going to let go of all my physical possessions, right? That could be a possibility, even though he still could be living it up, right? I mean, the reality is with his profile, he has to have that security and he has to have that space. So anywhere he goes, he has to rent a pretty, fat place. So that physical possession thing, that's a interesting one.
Strange one.
Yeah. So I don't know. My take on this whole stock price too high, I kind of think is a little bit different this time personally. Like, yeah, I think in the past, like, there was this one time back, it was like several years ago, right, 2013, 14. I think Phil LeBeau from CNBC was asking like, oh, what do you think about the stock price or something? And he was saying, oh yeah, it's too high, and the stock tanked. And then a few years ago, 2 years ago in 2017, I think he was saying like, oh yeah, the stock prices or our valuation is higher than what we deserve. But that's a little bit more cryptic. It's not necessarily the stock price today is like, like today was a very clear, blatant like thing. He's saying the stock price right now at this moment, right? 60 or 770 is too high in my opinion. It wasn't an answer to a question in an interview where he just said, oh, okay, yeah. It was Elon Musk initiating this statement, right? Yep. And it was a clear statement on the stock price. It wasn't just, oh, it's higher valuation than we deserve type of we will own up to it. It wasn't like that. It was a little bit different to me actually this time. Yeah,
I would definitely agree. There is some nuance there in the different iterations of this same message that we've heard from Elon over time. I do happen to have like the different quotes because I just looked them up this morning. So a lot of them are like that, where he's like, well, we don't necessarily deserve that valuation or that stock price right now, but one of them that he said, and this I think was unprompted. I'm trying to remember this, like this was 7 years ago, but
Yeah.
he was in London and there was like a group of people there for some presentation. I can't remember what it was about, but I remember specifically watching it because I think in that video he talked about the Model 3, and that was like really, interesting news in 2013. But in that he said, quote, "The stock price that we have is more than we have any right to deserve right now," end quote. So that's pretty similar. It's, it's again, there's that deserve language in there versus just straight up saying, oh, it's too high right now. But it's also him speaking about it versus posting on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I think the message was pretty similar there. And again, that was unprompted from an interview. So
yeah, I respectfully disagree in a sense that, like, our valuation is. Wait, can you repeat that exact quote?
So it's, quote, "The stock price that we have is more than we have any right to deserve."
Okay, got it. Right, that to me is more of a neutral type of aspirational, saying like, hey, it's higher than we deserve. He's not necessarily stating the stock price should be lower, or because it's too high, it's wrong. He's just saying that, hey, it's something we don't deserve at this time.
Right. If you look at other valuation metrics, like it doesn't necessarily make sense, but you could still argue that.
Exactly. But today's statement was emphatically, in my opinion, much more clear. It was saying the stock price is too high. In other words, it should be lower. Right. It's like it was a very, very like clear statement. I think that's what's kind of shocking to me in a sense. The emphatic clarity of a CEO and Elon Musk of all people to come out and say it's too high. Right. And to me, the first word that comes out of my mind is unnecessary. It's like, the stock price is already so volatile in and of itself. Right? I mean, it's going to go up and down. Look, we were at, under 200 a year ago. We went up to 960. Now we went down to 350. We went up to 880 or something after ours, right?
Yep, 880.
And then now we're down to like whatever, below 700.
700,
yeah, 700. And it's like, we don't need more volatility and we don't need the help of the CEO to make the stock more volatile. Like, how much more volatile does Tesla stock need to be? It's like... it's like, I don't know. And the other thing is, a lot of times these comments from Elon, they tend to hang over for like a year or two, where it's like, whenever it gets to that price, people are like, oh, don't you remember though? Elon said it was too high at that price, right? And so while Elon might say, oh, at this moment, he thought it was kind of on the high side, that was his intent, a year or two later, let's say it's a different situation, people still go back to that, argument. It's like just giving like a treat to the shorts, right? The shorts are going to use this like a million times over, right? Even Elon Musk thinks Tesla's overvalued. It's going to go on for like years and years, right? This tweet. And I just think it's like, it's just unnecessary,
Yeah. The tough part about this one too, in particular, is because they just raised money at, I think the share price at that time was like 750.
Yeah,
it was definitely
in this ballpark though. 767 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. So for him to tweet that when, the share price was almost identical or even a little bit below where they raised capital at, that I think is, again, unnecessary, I think is a great word for it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had, been part of that capital raise and then Elon comes out and, 3 months later says, oh, the stock price is too high, then that would be a little bit frustrating. Obviously, the macro environment has changed. So that could be a big factor here in why Elon is saying this. Production is shut down. We don't know when it's going to return. So obviously that should weigh on the stock price. And Elon said that should be identified as a significant risk on the earnings call. So things have changed, but it is still, a bit disappointing to see him say that when they just raised at this price.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend text me this morning. He's like, hey, what happened to the investors on the last cap raise, at 767? How are they feeling, when the CEO says it's too high? And I think there's a lot of factors. And I understand Elon, the guy's under a lot of stress. And he tweeted, actually, his baby is due on Monday, which is, very stressful time for him. Tesla is basically at a standstill and there's no compromise from the local governments at all, and he's so frustrated. Maybe he was going on 2 hours of sleep as well, and he's just really, really just agitated at the moment. And I can completely understand it. So I understand the Elon Musk mind here, he's and the best way I can put it is hey, he's trying to defend himself against those who are criticizing him for profiting, to try to get the Fremont factory restarted. So he's saying the stock price is too high. I don't care. I don't care about physical possessions anyways, right? I'm going to just sell them all. So let's get this factory started. Like that's his main point. But
and he did say too, like, I'm focused on Mars, I'm focused on Earth. Like,
exactly.
He was very much moving away from like, the stock and things like that, moving towards the progress and the goals.
Exactly. But I think there's probably much better ways to get that point across than Tesla's stock price is too high, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, hey, make a big donation or something, like donate like 50 million or 100 million or something to a good cause, or start a movement with some funding to really help people in this time of need, or do something productive. And so I want to ask your take on this. Like, does Elon have like justification to think that the stock price is too high? I mean, do you think it's too high?
That's always the question whenever he says this. So, I mean, the market cap right now, it's $130 billion. If I think, Elon has said in the past that Tesla, he expects, I think, to be $1 trillion company at some point, or that he would be surprised if it wasn't, or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but, for Tesla to do that, that's a 7x growth from where they're at right now. So a couple doublings, almost 3 doublings. And at a 7% annual return, it takes 10 years for something to double. So, if you're 4xing over 2 decades, you're basically, achieving the market average return. So if Tesla is a $1 trillion company in 20 years in 2040, then the stock price right now is justified. And I think 2040 is an extremely long timeline for Tesla to achieve that valuation. So no, I don't think Tesla is overpriced at all right now. I think it's underpriced. And every time that Elon has said this, I have thought that. And in hindsight, it has been underpriced. Like Tesla has outperformed consistently versus the S&P 500 pretty much whenever you would have bought it. So
yeah. I mean, my take is actually, like, I do think Tesla is like optimistically priced. I shared this actually before the earnings. And after the earnings, at 100 and let's say $50 billion that it was, let's say just moments ago, or so.
This morning.
This morning. I mean, it does have a lot of optimism pricing, and rightfully so. Like, who else in the auto industry has the position, the product, the lead? Just like look at autonomous driving, look at robotaxi network. Like, who has that type of momentum and position for a new $1 trillion market? Tesla's in a great position. So a lot of, I think, Tesla's valuation is like, when it does go up like extremely, a lot of times it's like, in a way, these option calls, option calls on autonomous driving, option calls on Tesla Energy, option calls on new lines of businesses. And so, and those aren't necessarily guaranteed. They're investments that, Tesla believers believe that they're going to pan out and have huge dividends. But if you strip away all the option calls in a way, and you're left with just their current core business, 150 billion at this moment in time, with all the risks that are still ahead in terms of ramping, it is a significant price to pay, And that's why I try to like tell people, part of the reason for this volatility is, Tesla has a great future and they have lots of things that will be priced in the future. But on the flip side, a lot of execution is priced in for their core business. And if things falter or flare, or if there's like some hiccups and some, the extended shutdown goes longer, etc., the valuation can fall, because there's a lot that, to price in just Tesla's core business, at 150 billion is optimistic in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely fair points. Like, there's upside that's, the upside is priced in. It's just a matter of how you want to price the risk, and how you want your price target, what discount you want to apply to what you think the future growth can be for that risk. So everyone's going to have a different perspective on that, and that's, totally fair, and everyone should have a different perspective on that if you're doing a good job of, analyzing your investments. But yeah, for me, I just think the risks are really low. I think Tesla's got just an amazing position to take advantage of where the market's heading, and I can't see anybody else. I just cannot fathom how anyone else can catch up to where Tesla's at right now. And beyond that, Tesla's lead is growing. So I think the risks are pretty limited. And yeah, I mean, that's that's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you think with this tweet, is Elon, do you think, going to get any, are there going to be any ramifications, you think?
From like
Like
the SEC.
SEC or lawsuit or anything? I don't know. Just because
Yeah.
in my opinion, like it's not necessarily like for guidance, you know?
Hmm.
It's not saying like they're going to, produce a certain amount or get a certain amount of revenue. It's not, is it material? Well, it's not really material in the sense it doesn't have to do with anything of Tesla's business. But it's a CEO opinion of a stock price. Like is that part of the settlement agreement? I don't know.
Yeah, so from what I looked at, I pulled it up this morning. I didn't see anything in the agreement that would cause this to be an issue with that settlement agreement. I don't know if it's an issue outside of the settlement agreement. I haven't looked into that, obviously. Not a lawyer.
Yeah.
So, but this is just my opinion. But I didn't see anything in the settlement agreement that would cause this to be a specific issue. So, I'm sure there will be questions about it. The shorts are definitely gonna, beat that drum all day long. But for me, it's not something that I'm too concerned about right now.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, bigger picture, I like to kind of take a balanced view. I kind of think we should just move on. I mean, Elon shared what he wanted to share. That was his thoughts for the moment. The guy's under a lot of pressure. The factory's shut down with no imminent open date. It's stressful, and he's ranting. He's sharing his thoughts, and he doesn't want to be criticized for thinking that, or for people thinking that he's going to make a profit off of this. That's not his motive, right? And so he says the stock price is high. He says, hey, I'm going to sell my stuff. Hey, let's open the factory and let's move on, basically. Let's just call it a day and move on. That's my kind of personal approach, and that's what I tell my wife. And then she kind of like is more of the volatile one. She's like freaking out. I'm like, hey, just calm down, just forget about it for a little bit. Let's talk about it tomorrow, etc. Right? But I think one of the concerns I have is not everyone can be like a level-headed, kind of balanced type of investor. There are people that are in the stock that a 10% move really freaks them out, or a CEO saying their stock price is too high freaks them out. And
I mean, especially if you're involved in options too, which a lot of people in Tesla
true.
are.
Yeah, I mean, traders too. But I'm talking about, let's say, more even the retired folk, let's say, who has like decent amount in Tesla, and they listen to the FUD and they've kept strong, but now Elon's saying the stock price is too high. What do? You're scared the stock price is going to drop further and further because of these comments. It just creates a lot of question marks and uncertainty when you have the CEO chiming in on this like very volatile stock, or at least the price itself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with your perspective overall. I mean, this is just like all those other times. You could argue that this is a little bit different in terms of the phrasing and the setup of it, but I think this is just going to be a footnote that we look back on in 3 years when Elon says it again, and we're just going to say like, oh, okay, been here, done that. So I agree. It's just best to kind of, the thing is, like, Elon's tweet didn't change anything about the company. It's totally irrelevant to the fundamentals of the business. Nothing has changed from Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday to Friday. It's all Tesla's still there. What we need to focus on is when they can start production. And that's really the biggest thing right now. Like, I think Q1 results were phenomenal. If people haven't watched my videos on that, like I'm kind of over the moon with the results on there. I think Tesla crushed it on margins. I think that is a huge indicator of their ability to quickly and profitably ramp up future product lines. And that's just going to open so many doors for them and just generate great returns. So those are the things we should be looking at and thinking about, not Elon's thoughts on the stock price today, because they haven't ever really been relevant in the past. And everyone should be sort of evaluating their own thoughts on that anyway. So yeah, I agree. Let's move on.
Yeah. I mean, do you think though, one of the things I was telling my wife is like, sometimes when Elon tweets about the stock price, those comments do, I think, create some type of cap in the short term. I don't know how long, it could be a few months, several months, maybe even a year or so. I don't know. I was telling my wife, hey, if I'm a trader or something, you gotta kind of be aware of that in a sense. It's like, there is some type of downward pressure or cap pressure when the CEO, of Elon's profile comes out and says it's too high at this point. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would agree more if he hadn't made similar comments in the past. I think the market is sort of, going to understand that and discount it a little bit because that has happened. If this was like the first time that Elon has ever done this, I would be way more concerned about it. I think the market would be way more concerned about it.
Yeah.
And I think that capping would be a lot stronger. For me, I don't know, Tesla's trading has been super interesting over the last few months. Like I wouldn't have expected such a quick rebound in this type of macro environment, and yet we have seen that. I don't want to say it's been acting irrationally because again, I do think Tesla is undervalued, but I guess I've just been more surprised with, the market's willingness to look past some of the risks that they seem to overemphasize in the past. So it's just been kind of interesting in terms of the change of perspective, like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that you mentioned before. It seemed like, in past years that sort of ruled supreme over the stock, and the last 4 months it hasn't done anything. So it just seems kind of like a new era, and I think Wall Street's just kind of ignoring some of the downsides now, and they're just seeing that Tesla is taking over this market and has a huge lead. So I don't know, it's really interesting.
I look at also some of the stock price movement recently is like with Tesla hitting 350 and bouncing up, doubling. A lot of other companies have done very similar since the March 23rd bottom. And then you have like a lot of the big companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. They're all, going back up to their previous highs. And so it's not just Tesla in a sense that's doing a massive rebound in the past, month. It's all these companies, and it's doing so while the prospects of economic recovery are still far out and pretty grim. And so that's making people question, saying, hey, what's going on? The market is irrational, or it's crazy. Like, why is the stock market going up when the economy is tanking? And the thing I keep on looking into is like the impact of the Fed's quantitative easing program and the unlimited type of money printing they're doing. I kind of wonder, like, is that going to lower the value of money in some ways in the future? And even though if it's not directly showing up in the way we track inflation, is it going to inflate certain prices, asset prices or equity prices, different ways? So, and are investors already kind of, moving toward the companies that will be safe havens, let's say, with the lower value of money, hypothetically, right? And in those cases, the safe havens I look at are good balance sheets and stable growth, stable or even higher growth. And so you have the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, the Amazons, all these guys just bouncing right back because they have great balance sheets and they're growing. And then you have like the Teslas and the Shopifys and even the Squares and all these others like jumping back up because they have good growth, and they're not at risk. And I'm thinking like, there's a limited supply of these companies that, you can invest in that gives you decent growth, right? And stable kind of balance sheets. And those companies are the ones that are really, I think, being lifted up high. And you can say it's not justified, but in another way, if the value of money does lower a lot because of, say, unlimited quantity easing, and we haven't even started printing money for like the local and state governments, and there's going to be other countries that start, I think, defaulting on their debt, and the U.S. has to get involved because they're like, everything's based around the dollar or mostly. And so, I think it's just the start of money printing. And in that case, it's like, I think investors are in a way, picking their stocks. And then Tesla is one of those stocks that's benefiting. And so I would actually kind of disagree in some ways with Elon that Tesla stock is overpriced. Because you have to say that for Amazon and Apple and Google and all these companies that are approaching their all-time highs. Are they all overpriced too, considering the economic situation? It's like, no, there's a reason I think that investors are doing what they're doing. I mean, it could go down in the future. I could be, wrong. But I think maybe Tesla's a beneficiary of a broader kind of move of money towards certain equities, right? To prepare for perhaps a lowering of the value of money. So anyways,
Yeah, no, I think I agree, with the sentiment there. And I think kind of the piece I would add is that the disparity between a strong performer and not a strong performer in a macro environment like this becomes more clear and more apparent. Mm-hmm. And this is something I've been talking about a lot with, regards to Tesla's competition.
Yeah.
Ford, GM, things like that. Like Ford guided for losing from an EBIT perspective, $5 billion in Q2.
Yeah.
In that type of environment, a company like Ford that's already struggling so much to invest in new technology where the market is heading, they're not gonna do that when they are losing $5 billion in a single quarter. They're gonna delay those projects, and then Tesla's gonna obviously keep working on the new paradigm. So the lead that Tesla has just grows because of the pressure that this adds to Ford and companies like Ford. It's more outsized for them than it is for Tesla. So I think you have those inflationary impacts. I think you have people reevaluating investments, and because the market did tank, there was a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines that could then be reallocated into stronger companies. So it kind of frees up liquidity to then reallocate. And then you also have just this disparity in how companies are going to perform that has grown because of the macro environment impacts and just what we're seeing in the economy in general. Yeah, so there are a lot of factors here that I think do make sense. It's just, I don't know, it's just kind of surprising to see like all of that pieced together and like work out in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I want to go into our live comments. We have a bunch of people commenting and joining in the conversation. I just want to kind of, highlight some of these views don't express my view or Rob's views.
Disclaimer.
Just views of
I can't even see them, so
viewers. I'll read out some of them. Okay. I wish Elon Musk was also in this video discussion.
We do too.
Yeah. Here it says Elon is something. You don't comment on your stock price. Here it says sell, sell, sell. Elon is crazy. He doesn't care about shareholders. What's wrong with him? There's a lot of stuff going on here in the comments. Anyways, I'll just leave it at that right now. I don't think.
Summary.
Actually, I think this is the summary I want to leave with. I think Elon said that to prove he does not care about money, and that's I think the point of the whole probably tweet episode. He wants to show that money isn't the priority, and so he's willing to take a short-term loss on the stock price. That again, he's willing to do it, but there's other costs involved, I think.
Right. Other people involved.
Other people. All right. Thank you, Rob, for joining the live stream. I know you've had a busy day, busy week. It's been a full week for us, I think. So good luck. I want to wish you the best on your channel, Tesla Daily Podcast. Where can people find your podcast and also YouTube channel?
Yeah, so on YouTube, just search for Tesla Daily or Rob Maurer, Maurer. You'll find it pretty easily. Also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, things like that. And then I am on Twitter at Tesla Podcast.
Okay, awesome. All right, thanks, Rob. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Bye.